All righty, here we go. One last time. Pickswise Mega March Madness Final Four style. Of course, this edition presented by FanDuel Sportsbook, joined by my usual cast of characters, Jim Root from the Three Man Week podcast and Dan Servodidio from Fantasy Alarm. Guys, we have arrived. We get a little more extra runway this week, not quite creeping up on us midweek games. We'll get the entire week to let the Final Four digest, marinate, and then Saturday night will be very exciting with two very intriguing matchups, which we will, of course, break down both. Let's start big picture, though. Jim, I'll start with you. Over the weekend, I wouldn't call the games very exciting, but the results certainly were emphatic for the teams that were able to advance into the Final Four.
Yeah, to your earlier point about, we have time. It's weird to have 5 full days to analyze 2 games instead of 3 days to analyze 32. Going into the first round, it is such a sprint of content to try to figure everything out. Now we got a little more relaxation. But yeah, the Elite Eight, not the most exciting, like you mentioned. I personally, maybe I'm a sicko, I loved the Villanova-Houston game. I thought it was excellent. Both teams were just at the top of their games defensively, in transition, physically. The refs kind of let them play, which I loved because that just amped up the defensive intensity. But yeah, I think we got the best 4 teams right now, teams that are playing top of the level. Duke and UNC certainly peaking at the right time. Kansas had that awesome second half, and then Villanova has just grinded opponents into oblivion. So yeah, Dan, I'm pretty content with where we're at right now with this Final Four. How about you?
Yeah, we got 4 major programs. I don't think you could ask for much more. I mean, 3 Hall of Fame coaches and a first-year head coach in Hubert Davis. It's just great stories all around. I'm probably going to get sick of Duke versus North Carolina talk by Saturday, but it's been really good. Yes, the Sunday Elite Eight games were a little depressing watching. A blowout between Kansas and Miami, and then St. Peter's not giving up much of a fight to North Carolina. But I'm ready for the Final Four. I mean, these games are going to be so good on Saturday.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting. So we've got Nova, Kansas, the first game on Saturday, and then of course the main event, the entree to your evening will be Duke and Carolina. On this show today, we'll do a little bit of recapping of the Elite Eight. We kind of touched on it right now, but I'll also let these guys kind of sink their teeth into the tournament as a whole. I mean, we're 64 games in of a 67-game tournament. And pretty much all the trends, all the angles, all the little nuances that we've seen comparing it to years past. I'll let these guys give their 2 cents. And of course, we'll have plenty of Final Four picks. We're going to give out a most outstanding player lean. I think most of us already kind of had some picks already in the bank with that prop, but we'll kind of revisit that one as well. And then I think the markets that are fascinating right now are kind of the matchup markets. We talked a little bit about it before we came on air. If you do money line parlays compared to what the books are offering with these exact outcomes, you're getting a little more juice if you turn your head to that market. So we'll dive in there a little bit. But let's start out with kind of the big picture. And we talked a lot about the blowouts and especially the Elite Eight. The games were not very close. But when I did my deep dive yesterday, I had some time on my hands, only 2 games to talk about this week. So I had some extra time on my hands. And the average margin of victory, 11.94 points in this tournament. It's actually the lowest that it's been since 2018, which I guess recency bias maybe kind of gravitates you towards, there's so many blowouts. The average margin of victory has to be longer or higher than it's been in prior years. But, Jim, that's not the case. This has actually been a pretty competitive tournament if you compare it relative to the last 3 years.
Yeah, I wonder how much that's driven by some of the first round, like 116, 215, 314 games. At the beginning of this season, the Southland, SWAC, MEAC teams, I think it's kind of a microcosm of this.
Yeah.
Those like lowest level teams started like 40-14 against the spread.
Wow.
I think the extra year for the seniors, the transfer portal being immediately eligible, all those have helped them get a little bit more talent. So maybe the low seed teams weren't getting blown out as badly. And perhaps that's having a heavy influence on that number there.
Dan, have you felt the madness seeping through this year, or has it been relatively tame?
Yeah, well, it's been pretty profitable overall to back the underdogs against the spread this year, especially if you grab some money lines. And I feel like if you just look at it, the path for a team like Kansas, you had underdogs or lower seeds just making runs like the Iowa State, Miami. If you just think about those teams making, no one had that matchup in the Sweet 16. Very few brackets did. But going around, you look at, Jim was talking about just some high major players that are now playing at other teams that were in this tournament. The first name I thought of was Teddy Allen for New Mexico State. Teams like that, just like these lower schools being a lot better than normally people would think. I mean, St. Peter's is evidence of that one, even though they don't even have, high major transfers from other schools. But yeah, the underdogs have been kind of helping out people if you bet on them this tournament.
Yeah, to your point, 53.9%, 34 and 29 through 64 games, one pick 'em, so you don't include the underdog in those stats. But yeah, if you just blind bet every underdog against the number, you're 54%. And I think most handicappers in today's day and age would take 54% in this absurd tournament every which way. All right, I think overall in the Elite Eight and the Sweet 16, frankly, all of last week, unders were the vibe. 11-1 overall, and also first half unders. Jim, these have been, I mean, goodness gracious, your nickname is The Undertaker, for God's sakes. This has been the theme of the tournament. The second week of the tournament has been seeped with pressure and nerves and maybe some different sight lines playing in different arenas, and the unders have reigned supreme.
Yeah, it was great. It was fun to be the Undertaker in a weekend where they went 11-1. That was outstanding. I forget which coach said it. It might have been Self. That the tension of going to the Final Four is way tougher than playing in the Final Four. And so I think we saw that compress the tempo. Part of it was matchup too. There are a couple slow teams that really seized control of the tempo, especially Villanova against teams that wanted to run. So that helped the Sweet 16 and Elite Eight games stay low in terms of total. We obviously still have Villanova. They're going to be trying to do the same thing. Hint, hint at the way I'm looking at that game. But yeah, I think maybe we get a little bit more open court performances in the Final Four because there's less tension. There's less like, are we going to make the Final Four or not? Like, we're here. Let's enjoy it. Let's run. Let's play basketball. I think we get a little more of that vibe.
Dan, does it flip back, do you think, this weekend to overs being kind of the vibe?
I don't think so because as I mentioned, 3 Hall of Fame coaches. They've been in this Final Four situation before, and then Hubert Davis has been assistant with North Carolina when they've been in this moment. I just think that they are going to know that defense is gonna be the thing that is gonna win out for this championship, and it's both teams have kind of gotten here on improved defensive play than overall this season, and you were talking about like teams just slowing down on offense too has been a big thing I've seen. Like a team like North Carolina, they can light it up, but you could see later in games with them, they would slow it down on offense, just finding that perfect shot. Villanova is a great example of that. Just the efficiency on offense has taken a better, importance than just running up and down the floor. Even a team like Duke, I mean, they can score at will, but you could see at some of their possessions, they were just, clear on, all right, let's get it to Banchero down low, or let's find that good shot. So yeah, I think it's going to stay unders. We'll break down these 2 games, but the unders is definitely something I'm looking at.
The unders have certainly been profitable. Again, if you blind bet every under last week, you are feeling very flush with your bankroll today. Hopefully it continues because, again, we've kind of tipped our hand a little bit where we're leaning for the Final Four. But let's, again, revisit the Elite Eight and let's kind of set the stage for what we're going to see on Saturday. And we'll start with Duke. I think the surprise to me, Jim, has been how convincing they've looked. We were ready to fade them at every point, every turn, and they've really proven me and I think a lot of doubters wrong over the last 2 weeks. Have they done enough with that convincing 9-point win over Arkansas to kind of make their case as the favorite? They are the favorite on FanDuel right now, but in your eyes, do they deserve to be the favorite heading into this weekend?
Yep, 100%. I thought at various points through the season, I said Duke's best is better than everybody else's. They just have a talent level that nobody else can really reach, and they had inconsistent effort. Sometimes they were very prone to the classic letdown kind of spot. If they had a big win, the game after it was a great fade for a young team. And so coming into this tournament, I knew they'd be dialed in, but what scared me was tension late in games. The Coach K's final game, is this young team gonna maybe give in to that kind of pressure? And it's been the exact opposite. Like, they've been so good down the stretch of games. They were down 5 late against Michigan State, flipped a switch, boom, ended up winning comfortably. Same thing against Texas Tech, like down kind of late, didn't miss a shot the final 9 minutes. Like, you can't say enough about how great they've been in these tight games down the stretch, getting to their talent level. It clearly, that narrative that I had sort of latched onto was wrong, and I'm adapting to what I'm seeing now, and that's that they're the best team in the field.
Blue Devils are the favorite, Dan, right?
Yeah, I do think like Kansas should be about even on the odds compared to Duke. So maybe there's some value if you're looking at futures to take Kansas there. Just the simple fact that they are, one seed, they're higher in rankings than Bart Torvik, Ken Palm than Duke overall. But Duke has been like, Jim mentioned the flip the switch. They've gone on runs in all their last three games where the other teams haven't been able to match them. We saw with Arkansas, Texas Tech, and Michigan State where Duke's going on, 9-point run, 10-point run, where the talent has taken over. They have NBA talent all over. And I've always thought this about like Duke teams, Kentucky teams of the past, where their talent is so much better, but it's all a matter of can you put it all together in, win or go home situation in multiple games in a row, and especially in crunch time, as Jim mentioned, like just, the inexperience, the young freshmen, if they can have it in them to, take advantage and let their talent kind of bleed through. And Duke has definitely done that with Griffin, Banchero, Mark Williams all stepping up here.
Yeah, and right now in FanDuel, Duke plus 160, Kansas plus 180. Not a lot of separation there, but still some separation. And maybe that's a little bit surprising considering Kansas, not by a lot, it's a half point more, but they are favored by 4.5 to where Duke only favored by 4 in their game against UNC. All right, let's shift the conversation from team to player. Most outstanding player in the tournament in my eyes has been, I don't want to call it an easy bet, but the Remy Martin one stuck out to me early, and I'm kind of latching on to him as my guy for Kansas. But it's kind of interesting to draw these correlations between the team, their team odds to win it all, and the player, the best player on each respective team, and the gaps there. So you want to take Duke, for example, and Jim, I know you've got another player on Duke that you're targeting, but Duke's plus 160 to win the title. Paolo Banchero's 3-1. I'm taking Paolo instead of Duke. I'm getting a little more extra cheddar there on that bet. Is that an approach that you would take if you're looking for this futures market to find some value? You go with the player instead of the team. And if there is a player on each respective team that you would identify, who would those players be?
Yeah, I think that's a great way to look at it. I don't want to steal your thunder. You did some excellent research on this. Even just when we were discussing before the show kind of influenced my thinking here. So I'll let you reveal that whenever you're feeling it.
Sure.
But yeah, like Villanova, I think if they win, Colin Gillespie's winning most outstanding player. I know that Samuels has been great and he won the region award, but it's going to be kind of like a lifetime achievement award, I think. Also, without Moore, he's clearly going to be the guy in the backcourt. I think they'll play through him on the block a little bit. His post up game is even more important without Moore's there anymore. So yeah, I would lean the value there. Martin, he already mentioned. I think he's still like 12-1, which is nuts to me. He just won the region most outstanding player too. Was their best player. Bill Self talked about how important his scoring run has been. So yeah, I think targeting the player is probably an apt way to go. Dan, is that what you're looking at too?
Yeah, well, I'll let Jared run through some of the names that we've seen in the past, but I think there's value on all these teams where if they make a run, like for Villanova, I mean, they could if they win it all, it might be because a guy like Eric Dixon out of nowhere has two really good games, and then that's what makes him win the award. Like for Duke, like Banchero's the headliner there, but it might be because a guy like AJ Griffin hits like 10 threes in a game, or the next game he's all over the place, owning the court. Where if defenses like North Carolina is focusing on shutting down Banchero, the reason they win might be another guy. Same thing with Kansas. Like Remy Martin is definitely the guys that have been running them through this bracket, but Agbaji's sitting there, a guy that's up for National Player of the Year awards possibly, and he's been struggling in the tournament, but there's definitely value if you're thinking like, all right, maybe he starts getting hot and plays like the guy he's been all year.
Yeah, I would recommend if you're thinking about making a futures bet this week, you crawled out from under a rock, you haven't bet, we all have some pre-tournament or some mid-tournament futures that I do think offer a little bit of value, but week of the Final Four, I think the MOP market is where you can extrapolate and extract the most value in the market if you want to bet futures. Banchero 3-1, Duke plus 160. Abaji 5-1, Remy Martin now plus 850, Kansas plus 180. Like you can kind of see the direction I'm going in there. And if you want to take it even to a more extreme, the most extreme, Caleb Love 20-1, UNC 5-1. I mean, that's a pretty big gap. And again, you have to choose correctly the player, but you also have to choose correctly the team. So either way, I would rather risk less to make more in the MOP market right now than to try my hand with the actual futures market. I would rather play that straight with individual bets or prop bets, which we'll get to in a minute. Thank you both for mentioning it wasn't really that intense research. I just went back and looked at the last 7, 8 most outstanding players. They've all been guards. Jared Butler, Kyle Guy, Dante DiVincenzo, Joe Barry, Ryan Arcidiacono, Tyus Jones, Shabazz Napier, Luke Hancock. The last time we had a big man win this award was 2012 with Anthony Davis, and there's no Anthony Davises in this field. Maybe Banchero's the closest thing we have to that. But Jim, that you said that skewed your thinking a little bit with where you think this market might land.
Yeah, I think it's about scoring. And as much as I wanted to maybe go with the dark horse Mark Williams prop for Duke because I think he's so important with the way he controls the rim, that just doesn't matter that much to the voters unless you're a total alien like Anthony Davis was, blocking every single thing. So that makes me a little bit intrigued by Jeremy Roach, 20-1, a little bit correlated to the Tyus Jones win back in 2015. He's on a team with Okafor and Justice Winslow, both who went much higher than him in NBA drafts. But he had the ball in his hands. He hit the big clinching shot against Wisconsin at the top of the key. Definitely lasted in people's minds with his performance. And Roach has been playing great. Re-entered the starting lineup for this tournament. Had those couple clutch shots down the stretch against Texas Tech. Those like really difficult fadeaways. Showed he's capable of making that kind of shot. I think he'll have the ball in his hands late again. So that's at least a reasonable value to me at 20-1 for Roach and the Blue Devils.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dan, anything to add on MOP before we start capping these games?
Well, you're just running through those names like Dante DiVincenzo, Luke Hancock. I mean, all those guys, like Jim was mentioning, weren't the best player on that team. And I can only imagine what the odds were for Luke Hancock to win most outstanding player. So
Family
I mean,
didn't exist really back then in 2013.
right?
So,
But like going back to what I was saying earlier, like look at a team like Kansas. If you think Kansas is going to win it all, I mean, look at Christian Brown's odds, or
yeah.
Jalen Wilson, guys that were maybe a little overlooking. David McCormick could just start waking up and have 2 monster games in a row. So there's definitely value on there, and worth betting if you think like Kansas is going to win, Duke's going to win, to take those those better odds.
Just to remind everybody, we did give out Remy Martin at 50-1 like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So hopefully one of you out there besides me is holding on to one of those tickets. I feel very good about that future position. But that being said, now let's get into what Kansas actually has to do, which that ticket is basically worthless toilet paper unless they can beat Villanova. Kansas is a favorite in this game. The line did move in their direction. I confirmed with some bookmakers this week. Justin Moore's worth 1 point. Line was 3.5, moved to 4.5. I think that's where it lands. I don't think it's going to get to 5, despite the fact that we're seeing a ton of handle come in on Kansas. As you would expect, Villanova, nobody wants to take Nova after they lost their best player. So I'll start with you with this, Jim. Obviously the handicap changes, but does the Nova handicap change enough without Justin Moore that you're totally bailing on the Wildcats in this game?
Not totally bailing. I mean, I'd probably have this around 2 if Justin Moore's playing. So for him to not be in there and it's up at 4.5, I'm already leaning Nova. I'm still crossing my fingers for that +5 to show up, but it probably never will. And I regretted, we were talking UCLA and UNC last week, and I never took the +2.5 with UNC. I stubbornly waited for 3, and I should have just taken it. So I probably will end up taking 4.5, even if it never hits 5. I just think Nova's going to control the tempo of this game. They've done it over and over in this tournament. They held Michigan to their slowest game since February 10th. In the Big East tournament, they held St. John's to the Red Storm's slowest game since February 5th. Like, they have clearly shown an ability to grind games to a halt. Every time they get a defensive rebound, they walk it up. And they're going to be even more incentivized to do that without Moore. They're down to 5 guys. Fatigue, foul trouble, all those things can really happen more in a faster game. So Villanova is going to avoid that as much as possible. So that has me already thinking under, first half under, and definitely leaning Villanova on the side here, Dan. As much as I kind of buy the narrative that more matters, Jay Wright and getting 4.5 points in a national semifinal, I got to lean that way.
Yeah, I'm like very torn because if Moore was playing, I would definitely take Villanova. I've been so impressed by them. especially because I was so high on Houston this tournament. But the more injury is just so huge to me for Villanova, especially because they've been playing a 6-man rotation. Caleb Dalen's going to move into the starting lineup there, but he's been like the main reserve off the bench, where guys like Chris Archidiakono, Brian Antoine are going to have to step up and play some meaningful minutes here. Where I did the math; they played a total of combined 14 minutes over the last 3 tournament games, where they're just coming in for a minute here and there to give guys a breather or quick foul trouble for Gillespie or more. But I think it's just a big deal. I know, Villanova's got a week to prepare, and Jay Wright's going to do, what he does best in game plan for Kansas here. He's going to know how to stop Kansas defensively. That's why I'm leaning on the first half under here, and I think you guys are right there with me, because I think Villanova is going to come out defensively, knowing, whether it's zone defense or switching on guys defensively. I think they're going to know how to slow down Kansas's offense and just make this a game. But overall, I think Kansas's playmakers and combined talent on the offensive side is going to win out, just because I think Villanova is now down a key guy that can get you a bucket in crunch time, which I think just matters. They've been leaning on Jermaine Samuels, who's stepped into a bigger role here, but they just needed, like I mentioned, Eric Dixon, or if it's one of these guys like Antoine or Archidiakono just having a game. And it's tougher now because Wildcats key reserve Jordan Longino has been out, and he's out for the rest of this tournament. I think that just also has hurt Villanova's depth of how many guys they can trust late in the game there. So I see your point with Villanova, and I'm leaning Kansas, but I like the Kansas on FanDuel to win by 1 to 10 points. I like that margin there for them. You can get good plus odds on that right now. Plus 172, I got it at. But so I do think they're going to win. Villanova's going to make this a game for sure. But I do think Kansas ends up coming out ahead. But I just don't think 4.5 points is a little too much for me.
Yeah, I'd be shocked if Villanova got blown out. So at 1 to 10, I think makes sense.
Yeah.
And the total's telling you it's going to be a relatively low-scoring game. So official picks, Jim and I are both on the first half and the full game under. I actually wrote up the full game under. It's a 3-star play right now on Pickswise.com. A lot of the same reasons we're giving now, with one exception. I haven't heard anyone mention how great Kansas's defense is playing. Holding teams to under 40% from the floor in the tournament, under 26% from three. And Kansas's offense hasn't been this explosive unit. Below their season averages from the floor in the tournament. Out of the 68 tournament teams, they're ranked 30th in Torvik's adjusted offense during these tournament games. So about middle of the road for this Kansas offense. Now, don't get me wrong. They have the talent to win and cover. I think it's the coaching and the scheme, and you're giving Jay Wright an extra day. Nova played Saturday. Kansas played Sunday. It might not matter, but when you're only playing 6 guys, that extra day, I think, does matter a little bit more. And I saw a very interesting quote by Jay Wright in the postgame presser when asked about how his team's going to handle these thin rotations. He mentioned the length of the television timeouts and just the overall pace of a Final Four game being much slower than a regular season game. Playing less guys isn't going to have as much of a physical toll on Nova as it would in the regular season. The timeouts are longer. The breaks are longer. He has more rest. I think Nova's going to be up for this game, and I think I would not be surprised if they won it. In fact, if I had to make a bet on the money line, you have to choose Kansas or Villanova to win right now. I think I would choose Nova to win this game. I don't know. Call it a hunch, call it a contrarian play, whatever. I'll mention one more prop. Eric Dixon. You mentioned him a little bit, Servo. This is a guy that is going to get a ton of minutes in this game. He only had 25 minutes against Houston. The one game that Justin Moore didn't play this year, he had 33 minutes. He's going to play 30-plus minutes in this game. His rebounding prop is 6.5. He had 9 rebounds in 25 minutes against Houston. He can get 7 rebounds in 30-plus minutes against Kansas. I love that rebounding prop for Eric Dixon. That is the other way I'm going to play. And I'm going to take 4.5 with Nova too. Obviously, I think they can win the game. I definitely think it's worth the play on the spread. So we're all kind of on consensus with the under. Little separation between Kansas and Nova. Servo does think Kansas wins. I think Jim and I are leaning towards Nova. And Jim, Remy Martin to score 15 plus. Nice little 2-1, almost 2-1 nugget there for you on our guy Remy Martin. You're going to be hopping on that prop too?
Yep, I think it's a matchup thing. He's obviously been playing well, so that's part of it. But Villanova's defense is all about switching. They're all about forcing you to attack one-on-one, and Houston's guards couldn't really take advantage of that. But I think we're going to see a lot of possessions where Dixon or Samuels has switched on to Martin in a ball screen, and he's attacking from the top of the key, and he's going to that step back or the wrong-footed floater or a quick pull-up jumper. I think he's going to have a ton of opportunities because of the way Villanova plays, and that's why I'm going for that prop. Over his point total at 12.5, I think is worthwhile, but I like the price on that 15+ one.
Yeah, and I think, I don't want to be left out in the cold with my Remy Martin most outstanding player prop. If he has a good game in the Final Four and Kansas loses, I might hop on a point. I saw his points prop 11.5 for the game. I think that's interesting. Interesting question in the chat. Matthew, thank you very much. Does Kansas try to run knowing Nova isn't deep, or is Nova just that good at controlling tempo? Servo, what do you think?
Yeah, on the defensive end, they do like to slow it down. And on offense, they will slow it down for sure. Like they will not let. I mean, they're gonna bleed up the whole shot clock for sure. It's interesting though because I think Kansas would initially like to run, and if they can get transition points with Agbaji, like if he starts heating up here, and it's just him, Martin, Brown, Wilson, they could stretch a lead out, especially if they are moving fast on offense, but. I think Villanova, just the way they play, they're going to slow you down on both ends. They're not gonna want to turn this into a back and forth game because that'll get away from them.
Yeah, real quick, I'll just add to that. Villanova's transition defense against Houston was phenomenal.
Amazing.
They don't care about who they're guarding. That's another bonus of their switching defense. They're not going to try to get on matchups. They're just going to take who's near them. And then we saw Kansas start to get transition buckets when Miami turned the ball over. Villanova never turns it over. They're not going to feed Kansas transition attack with turnovers. So yeah, I do control the tempo. It's a big reason I like first half and full game under.
Nova in the under, baby. You heard it here first. All right, let's move on to the main event. North Carolina and Duke. I don't know. Maybe these teams have played before. Maybe. We have some prior data. We have some prior data to
first time in the tournament, though.
Yeah, it's true. First time in the tournament. This one shocked me a little bit, guys. And North Carolina's catching about 4 points. You might find a 4.5 out there. Totals 151, which pretty high total for a Final Four game. North Carolina's 8-2 against the number in their last 10 against Duke. Average cover margin of 11+ points. Holy moly. They are dominating this series. No surprise, Jim, we're seeing the early handle come in on UNC. But I think we're all kind of in agreement here with the exception of maybe Dan that Duke probably wins this game, even though UNC's maybe the hotter team. Their numbers are better, but I think this is Duke's game.
Yeah, I mean, Duke, when they passed the Texas Tech defense test and scored 1.17 points a game or whatever against the number one defense in the country, that was enough for me. And then they rolled that Arkansas game. That was a 15-point win, not a 9-point win. That final margin is deceiving. And then just looking back at the numbers between these two this season, Duke laid 3.5 on the road and 11 at home. So that would tell you something like 7 on a neutral. And I get that North Carolina's playing a lot better, but Duke's playing really well too.
Yeah.
So I think that tells you this should be more like a 5.5 line to me, those historical numbers. So I'm leaning Duke -4. I think it's a hair low. I just, like I said, I think their best is better than anybody else's. And although Carolina has clearly a shot, they won at Duke. This is the Blue Devils game for me here.
Okay, Servo, sell me on the heels.
Well, so I do think Duke wins, but I think North Carolina is going to keep it close. And I could just see, we haven't seen a buzzer beater yet this tournament, so maybe this is it. But
we saw one in the college basketball invitational last night, but we can't get one in the NCAA tournament.
Right. But you were mentioning North Carolina being good against the number, and as underdogs in their last 4 games, they're 4-0 against the spread. And one of those was that outright win against Duke in the regular season finale. But the way North Carolina is playing right now, especially just so efficient on offense and just making teams match them on offense, I see them, forcing Duke to be perfect, near perfect on offense. And the thing that I keep coming back to is Duke made runs to pull away from Michigan State, Texas Tech, and Arkansas, where the opposing teams couldn't match them offensively, couldn't match them bucket for bucket in those runs. I see North Carolina being a team that can do that and have multiple guys that won't back down, and they know they can do it against this team because they've done it already. And I just think that the big matchup here if Brady Manick can hold his own just enough defensively on Banchero, because it's been an issue earlier this year, but the way Manick is on the offensive end, Banchero's just not a shutdown defensive, even though he's a top NBA talent for sure. But on defensively, he has struggled at times. So I think like Manick, if he can just match Banchero's offensive production, I think that's huge here. But just in general, I see North Carolina having the offensive firepower to go toe to toe with Duke here, and I like the 4 points there. I think it's maybe actually, Jim was saying it might be a point too low, but I think it's the other way. I like that it's less than a possession or more than a possession for North Carolina here.
Interesting. You like the team total as well?
Yeah, for the reasons, Duke's defensive woes have been well documented, but they give up 76 to Michigan State, 73 to Texas Tech, and then 69 to Arkansas in that last game. And North Carolina's got a better offense than all three teams.
Yeah.
So if we think this game's going to be, and North Carolina doesn't have a great defense, so I just see it going back and forth. Definitely a faster paced game than that Nova Kansas one. But I just see North Carolina going over, 73.5. I think they can go over that.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating that we get two games and we get the two teams that are more suited to play an under are playing each other in the first game, and then the two teams that are more suited for an over are playing in the second game, and there's a 20-point gap between the two totals, which will make for a very fascinating carryover to Monday night. If we get Nova, let's say, that's the most, slugfest, muck it up team in the tournament right now against the Duke. The contrasting styles is fast, but we're not there yet. We're still on North Carolina and Duke. I'll add a couple of little nuggets and I'll let you guys chew on these. So the totals in the two first games, 153, 152.5. I would be a little more inclined to say that we're getting value to the over at 151. I don't see any reason why the total should have dropped with these teams right now. The defenses are playing well, sure, but I think the offenses, especially for Carolina, playing at an elite level, probably the best level that Carolina's offense has played all year. And when I looked at the box scores of the two games, Duke laying 3.5 on the road, won by 20. AJ Griffin had a huge game there, but they out-rebounded UNC by 16. In the return matchup, UNC was catching 11. They won the rebounding battle +3. Not as severe, but still, I think the rebounding battle is kind of the indicator here. So, Jim, if there is an edge on the glass for one of these teams, which one would you say?
I think it's a slight edge to Duke. That first one's pretty telling to me. I mean, Duke didn't miss, so there weren't that many defensive rebounds available for UNC, which I think made it tough for them. But yeah, I give Duke a slight edge. They've got a little more front court depth. Like they can bring Theo John in to refresh Mark Williams. Banchero's bigger. The more Keels wing combo is bigger than what North Carolina's thrown out there with Love, and I guess Leaky Black is bigger. But yeah, I lean towards Duke in the rebounding battle. I didn't even mention earlier I'm on Duke first half -2. I should come out and say that. Turned in my pencils down on my Pickswise best bets, submitted those right before the show, and I'm on the first half -2. Avoiding any of those late game shenanigans that Dan was discussing, a backdoor three or a buzzer beating three that Duke wins by. I like getting it out of the way of the first half.
I actually, now that I think of it, I think a good parlay for a same game parlay would be Duke first half money line, and then maybe buy a few points on the over, get it to like -1 or not minus, but like get it to like 146, 147. That probably pays out plus money. And then you're kind of buying a couple of points in both regard. Servo, back to the glass. Is that a key for you? Did you kind of use that as a foundation for your handicap in this game? Do you think North Carolina might have an edge on the glass with Baycott and Manick in the middle?
I think Baycott, it's going to be interesting to how the officials call this foul trouble, especially from Mark Williams. Baycott can own the paint if Mark Williams is out of the game for, I know they got Theo John coming in, but I do see Baycott having a big advantage just in that head-to-head. I mean, Banchero is going to have the advantage over Manick for sure on the glass. The rebounding is interesting. I think that like how if I'm looking at the backcourts here, it was a big thing for me looking at these matchups. Like Love and Davis versus, I know Roach has been better, but Roach and Keels has been kind of struggling, hasn't been in the rotation as much. So they're leaning heavily on guys like Moore and Griffin to be more ball handlers. But I look at North Carolina having two guys that can go at you. And I don't know how they're going to do, stopping both of them defensively, because I think they both have the speed to go by, like if they're putting keels on someone. And I also think like Roach might be just a touch too small to kind of guard RJ Davis. So I'm interested to see what they do defensively. Duke does, because just the Duke struggles on defense has been an issue for me. Thinking that it might cost them at some point. And I just see North Carolina having that offensive firepower to take it to them. But the rebounding worries me slightly. And I think it comes down to Baycott versus Mark Williams and who has the upper hand early in that.
UNC's win, obviously it was Coach K's last game at Cameron. Baycott had 23 and 7 in that game. 4 starters for Carolina in double figures. I mean, they scored 94 points. It was I don't want to call it a blowout, but it was pretty decisive. An 11-point dog winning by 13 on the opponent's home floor with all the pomp and circumstance involved with that game. All right, let's move on to why everyone's here. The end of the rainbow Monday night before we get one shining moment. Jimbo, I'll start with you. Who's cutting down the nets?
I think Duke's winning. I took a big position on them before the Arkansas game at plus 400. I don't think there's a ton of great value in the futures market, unfortunately, anymore. I know that's a bland, boring answer, but you got to stick to the value. Got to see if that's there, and I don't see it right now. But I do think Duke wins. I think they beat Kansas, despite me betting Nova. I think Kansas gets by, and it's a really entertaining game Monday night.
You're a man of principle, Jim. Man of principle.
Try to be.
These matchup bets are fascinating. I think Duke over Nova I saw 5-1. You probably can shop around, maybe get a better number somewhere else. That would be the matchup for me. Duke beating Nova. Servo, you like Kansas though as your team to cut them down.
I do like Kansas to win, and Kansas over Duke at plus 350 on FanDuel I think is good odds for that. I mean, the Kansas Duke matchup is a good one. I think I'm not sure what the odds is on that, but it's I mean, I feel like that's a safe bet if you don't want to pick a winner. If you just think Kansas and Duke both get there, or money line parlay both of them together. But I do like Kansas over Duke at good plus odds there.
Yeah, and I think when you look at the futures market again, you have to get creative to find value, because I think just betting straight up Duke or Kansas to win at this point, you'd be better off just, risking a little bit more, bet the money line on Saturday, roll it over into Monday night. You tend to get better odds, especially if you're betting Duke and it's Villanova that wins, because we were looking at the odds before we came on the show at FanDuel. Duke actually would be just a barely 1-point favorite against Kansas, where Duke, they'd be about a 4.5 point favorite against Villanova. So again, which game you like and how you see the underdog favorite dynamic playing out, that needs to impact the futures market, because in the bracket format, if Nova wins, all of a sudden your Duke future loses a lot of value, and you have to, look at it in a different way, I guess. So I guess look to different props when you're trying to navigate the markets this week and the futures, because I think the straight futures market doesn't offer as much value. Gentlemen, parting shots. It's been a fun 3 weeks. Anything before we go that we should be looking at, and maybe some advice to new bettors betting their Final Four for the first time, Jim?
No new advice. I'll be in New Orleans for a week, so if you're down there, shoot me a DM and we'll get a beer or something. So
all right, there you go.
That's it's an invitation, not advice.
Get some beignets at Cafe Du Monde. Servo, Final Four advice before we say our final farewells.
Well, if you've watched this whole thing, listen to us here, it's clear that we're all of different opinions on these games, especially me, I think, against you guys. But that just goes to show you, like, this is so unpredictable. We almost had St. Peter's in the Final Four. So just, have fun with it. I mean, don't go crazy. Enjoy the games first and foremost. These are going to be some 2, and then on Monday, some 3 awesome basketball games.
Legit blue bloods. Their uniforms are blue, different shades. Their pedigree is everything you could ask for in the Final Four. No random results. All of these teams deserve to be here. They're playing great basketball. Throw the seeds out the window, and you're right. Just enjoy the show, because we only have 3 more college basketball games left, meaningful ones if you want to count the NIT and I guess the other college basketball tournaments happening. But the meaningful ones, we only have 3 left, and they'll all be taking place Saturday night and Monday night. So that's it for Dan Servodidio, Jim Root. I'm Jared Smith. We appreciate you hopping on here. The Pickswise Mega March Madness preview show, Final Four style. Good luck with those bets this weekend.